you safety in this moment of uncertainty. Of course, we will bring you all of the latest that we get from this ongoing situation between Iran and Israel. But we move on now, and a high-level multidisciplinary committee headed by the Union Home Secretary will examine the causes that led to the Air India plane crash in the western Indian city of Ahmedabad, and also suggest comprehensive guidelines to prevent such incidents in the future. During a press briefing today, the Civil Aviation Minister, Ram Mohan Naidu, said that the authorities will conduct an extended surveillance into all Boeing 787 Dreamliner flights. Currently, 34 of these planes are operational in India. The Civil Aviation Ministry has said the committee will not be a substitute for other inquiries being conducted by relevant organisations. As per the Ministry, the panel will focus on formulating standard operating procedures for preventing and handling such occurrences in the future, and will publish its reports in around 3 months. Here is what the Civil Aviation Minister had to say.
We do have a very strict protocol, robust protocol, which we follow every time. But even after, when the incident happened, we also felt that there is a need to do an extended surveillance into the Boeing 787 series. So from the DGCA, we have also given an order to do the extended surveillance for the 787 planes. There are 34 in our Indian aircraft fleet today. I believe that 8 have already been inspected, and then with immediate urgency, all of them are going to be done.
This comes as the black box from the flight was also recovered from the roof of the hostel mess building of the BJ Medical College where the flight crashed into. The analysis of the black box, which is a small device that records aircraft information, could provide vital clues about what triggered this disaster. Let's listen again to what the Civil Aviation Minister said.
One important update from the technical investigation which is happening through the AIB is the recovery of the black box yesterday around 5 p.m. from the site. The AIB team believes that this decoding of the black box is going to give a in-depth insight into what would have actually happened during the process of the crash or moments before the crash itself. So we are also eagerly waiting for what the results or the report is going to be once the AIB goes through its full investigation.
Meanwhile, authorities of the Ahmedabad Civil Hospital have so far identified 6 victims on the basis of the DNA samples and initiated the process to hand over the bodies to relatives. Earlier, 8 victims who were identified by their relatives and did not need DNA profiling as their bodies were not damaged had been handed over to their families by the hospital. Hostels of the BJ Medical College that were damaged in the Air India plane crash were being vacated as the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau wanted to conduct a probe according to the institution's dean. Well, an extremely tragic incident, and investigations, of course, ongoing to find out the cause of this horrific incident. Joining us to discuss the latest developments is Captain Dr. MJ Augustin Vinod, a former pilot of fighter planes and aviation expert, who is joining us from New Delhi. Captain, thank you ever so much for taking the time to join us and discuss this deeply saddening and despairing news. But something that must be discussed is, of course, this operation and the ongoing efforts to find out why this happened and how it can be avoided in the future. We had that press briefing earlier. We've used a lot of jargon and a lot of information, but in real terms, can you tell us what the next steps are now in terms of the black boxes being found, the investigations going to happen, and the ongoing understanding that will be gained in the coming days and weeks?
Firstly, thank you, Joshua. Point is, there are two aspects to the whole thing. First is the DGC has come out very clearly saying that there is a need to look into the standard operating procedures. So that I'm sure the company as well as the regulators will sit down, work on it, and come out with a new standard operating procedure if there is a need. The second is the black box is out. So what really went wrong, we'll now be able to put our fingers on, which means the time for speculations, time for wild theories, time for probably correct theories, everything is now behind us. Now, this is the time we stand in solidarity with people who lost their lives, both on the ground, as well as people who were in that particular ill-fated aeroplane. See, aeroplane or flying in the air, we are not designed to fly in the air. If we were, God would have given us wings, isn't it? It's only, birds are designed to fly in the air, and we are encroaching upon the zone which is meant for other beings to be there. So the gravity, sometime or the other, will get the better of you, which is something which all of us who do air travel must accept. It's not an equipment which is like foolproof. Accidents keep happening all over the world for some reason or the other. Aim is we should, after every accident, learn something and make air a better place, because air is transcends everywhere, and more often than not, we don't have very many borders in air. So to fly like a bird, we need to make air safe, and that is what is going to happen the moment preliminary investigations point towards a particular direction.
Yes.
The aspect about standard operating procedure that DGCA has come out with, Joshua, is going to change the way probably the operations are going to be carried out, especially during the critical phases of the flight. We need to wait and see what kind of changes that it is going to throw about. If you remember, the Tenerife crash gave us the word takeoff to be used only when you're intending to take off or when something related to takeoff is being said. Before that, the word takeoff was used very loosely, even when you're on the run, or not on the runway, you were using the word called takeoff. So after that, the runway incursion cases have reduced a lot. So that was an SOP change. So likewise, something, earth-shattering may come, or something very specific may come. That we need to wait and watch. Once again, like I said, my candle is up for people who lost their lives, both on the ground and people who were traveling in that ill-fated aeroplane. Over to you, Joshua.
Yes, I do have some news to bring you. I've just received information that Air India, in an X post, have said that they will be providing an interim payment of 2.5 million rupees to the families of the deceased and to the family of the survivor. Of course, no amounts of money, no amount of payment will be able to make up for the devastation and the pain that so many families, friends, loved ones will be feeling currently. But of course, after a tragedy of this magnitude, efforts are being made, the investigations are ongoing, and more information around the reason for the crash will become clear in time. But Captain, I would like to come back to you, and I'm glad you brought up the humanitarian aspect of this, the moment to mourn, the moment to pray. This is, of course, extremely difficult and unprecedented of this kind. We know that the Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner recently celebrated 5 million flights over a 14-year period, hadn't experienced anything like this. But how can the public, how can people move forward, how can the loved ones move forward and carry on using planes after a disaster of this kind? What is needed from governments, from businesses alike?
A very wonderful question, Joshua. See, when you're designing an aeroplane and when you're designing a particular procedure, you want to cover, I beg your pardon, you want to cover all possible scenarios and all possible places where one could go wrong. And how did you come to know that something could go wrong? It's through various accidents and incidents that happened in the past, isn't it? So every accident or every incident or every accident that didn't happen adds to the statistics for you to go back to the drawing board if there is a need to go back to the drawing board, and go back to the procedures if there is a need to go back to the procedures. In this case, it could be both, because I'm just thinking aloud. In a critical phase of flight, um, you know, like for example, in a particular aeroplane that Airbus makes, beyond a certain speed, if you lower the gear, lower the wheels, it will not come down, because there is a lock which prevents it from aeroplane, the gear to come down. Why? Because the gear can at that speed fly away. Similarly, you have something called automatic retraction system, in which the flaps retract automatically based on the speed, because if you don't retract it, the flaps may fly out. And if it is an asymmetric flap damage, you may, probably wing drop to one side and probably crash. So these are the things that came about after certain incident or certain accidents that happened. So I am just thinking aloud that probably they may go back to the drawing board in this case as well. Over to you, sir.
Captain Dr. MJ Augustin, thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak to us.